from the Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh, and with that, a hearty congratulations to Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers, who finally captures the MVP of the NBA. He is your 2022-23 NBA MVP, the first MVP we've had in a Sixer uniform since the 2001 season, 2000-2001, Allen Iverson. So congratulations, Joel. Long overdue. It is definitely an honor. It is deserved and deserving of a player like you, and how important that you've been not only to this team in this city, but also to the NBA as a whole, as you are the poster boy of that process. So Joel Embiid captures the MVP. And how's everybody doing tonight? And welcome back to the Talking Philly Sports with Matty B program here on the Edge of Philly Sports with your boy Matty B. It is Tuesday, May the 2nd, 2023. And boy, is it cold outside. That's right, folks. If you wouldn't know that it's May, then I wouldn't blame you based on what's been going on outdoors. What, it rained for 3 days straight and then kind of stopped, kind of didn't stop. Now it's kind of overcast again. It's just been horrible, horrible weather over the last 4 days. But that has not stopped anything from rolling through on this sports train here in Philadelphia, because obviously we have a plethora of stuff to get into tonight. As I mentioned, Joel Embiid winning the MVP, but that's kind of overshadowed by what happened last night at TD Garden in Boston with the Joel Embiid-less Philadelphia 76ers as they opened up the Eastern Conference semifinal round against the Boston Celtics. And yeah, that's right. You're hearing me talk about the Sixers, folks, and I get it. I know what I said. I hate Glenn Rivers, and I made a promise never to speak of the Sixers until Glenn Rivers was gone. But I cannot. Just because I made a promise not to talk about them doesn't mean I haven't been watching them. And I'm a basketball fan, always been a basketball fan. I just cannot stand Glenn Rivers. I'm not a huge fan of Daryl Morey's either, but it does not mean that I have not been watching. And last night was a game that just took you through all kinds of levels of emotion. James friggin' Harden, man, went off like 5 years ago. James Harden, 45 points, led the Sixers in everything on the court, off the court. Just was the man that would basically not be denied last night, as the Sixers somehow found a way to win that game against a Boston team that just dominated the paint against the Sixers. I mean, if there was not, I've never seen a game in my life, or participated in a game, seen a game, watched a game, whatever, that a team dominated another team so heavily down below than the Celtics did the Sixers last night. And yet the Sixers came away with the win, and a huge victory, which might go a long way. And as this series kind of sets up, Joel Embiid was not in the lineup last night as he's nursing that bum knee. But maybe now this is it. Maybe this was the harbinger or the omen that we needed to kind of take us all the way past the second round into the Eastern Conference Finals and potentially onto the NBA Finals. But I don't think James Harden's going to score 45 points every night. If he does, then we're going to win a championship. But what a game last night from the Sixers and Harden. And we're going to get more in depth in that game a little bit later on. We also got the Eagles draft, and the recap that all like indicators say that it was a great draft for Howie Roseman and the Eagles. We're going to talk in depth about that. I had the privilege and the honor of working with EOP this weekend on night two and around. I said night two, rounds 2 and 3. I hosted the draft show for EOP. I had a great time in studio with with Big Al and Dives and Half and Mark Henry Jr. And it was just a really, really great night. Had the privilege of working with those guys for about 5 hours that Friday night, a late night. And then I turned around and ref 25 hockey games over the next 2 days, 25 30-minute hockey games over the next 2 days in Bucks County. So it was a hell of a weekend for me as well, talking about sports and doing sports. So um, an interesting weekend for us all. And then the Phillies wrapping up the month of April over 500 by 2 games. And then tonight, or then last night, going out to LA and getting pummeled by the Los Angeles Dodgers. But tonight, Bryce Harper is coming back into the lineup. He'll be batting third for the Phillies tonight as he returns to the lineup after missing about 5 months and maybe 2 weeks removed from Tommy John surgery. So just an amazing. I'm not going to call him a superhero or a Superman. That's ridiculous. But just an amazing recovery, and obviously aided by the fact that he is a DH, and we're not going to need him to throw a baseball for the foreseeable future. He can be DHing all day long, but to have him come back into the lineup just 5.5 months removed from Tommy John surgery is just utterly amazing. Or maybe is it 5 months and a week, something around there, right? Maybe 5 months, 10 days, whatever. November 23rd was when he got the surgery, but just an amazing recovery by him. And he will begin his return to hopefully potential Bryce Harper MVP form tonight in Los Angeles, as he will be in the lineup batting third where he belongs for the Philadelphia Phillies. But first, before we do anything else here on the program, we got to start with your day in Philadelphia sports history. And I go all the way back to the year 1989 for this moment in Philadelphia sports history, because this was the day that Mike Schmidt hit his career 548th home run. It was during a loss at the Vet to the Houston Astros. Mike Schmidt, that would actually end up being his final home run, as he would pretty much hang it up. By the end of the month, he had decided that his time was done. They went out to San Diego in mid-late May, and he decided to announce his retirement. But on this night, back in '89, Schmidt hit his 548th and final home run of his Hall of Fame career for the Phillies in a loss against the Houston Astros. And that is your day or your moment in Philadelphia sports history, brought to you by the good folks over here at Talking Philly Sports with Matty B. And speaking about the good folks over here, and not necessarily on this show, but on the Edge of Philly Sports Network, there you go. You got it. This lineup is this week's lineup. It was a hell of a week. Much props, I guess, is the word I'm looking for, to be given out to Big Al, and really all the other guys too that participated heavily in the draft coverage. This network really went above and beyond. I was with them last year. We did a on location draft stuff, but this year was so much more better, and so much just better content, better detail, better organization, just a lot better. And a lot of work was put into this by a bunch of people. So huge shout out to those guys. But here is your lineup for the week. Last night you had the Sully squad, Sixers post game. Of course, we'll get into the game in here in a minute. And then I had the dubious honor of hosting the Fightins final last night at 1 a.m. talking about a 13-4 loss. I'm actually on the Fightins final for tonight too, so doing 2 nights of late night duty here on the network. As hopefully we're talking Phillies win here in a few hours. But again, this is your lineup, chock full of everything you need here on the Edge of Philly Sports. I defy you to find something you cannot find on Edge of Philly Sports. And the Gobbler chiming in. Hey, what's going on, Pat? How are you, Pat? Pat had a busy weekend too, as he was up in Rochester covering the Wings in their final game of the year. So I'm sure he had a good time doing that. But folks, let's jump into this, because I've had to sit on my hands now for about Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days. 5 days I had to sit here like a bump on a log and not talk anything critical about Howie Roseman and the Eagles, because apparently, based on the draft and based on the selections of Carter, Smith, let's look at the list here. I got it right here. Let me bring it up. So we got Jalen Carter, the first round pick, selected at 9th. Nolan Smith, the 30th overall in the first round. Tyler Steen, he was the second round pick at 65, the guard out of Alabama. Sidney Brown, third round pick, 66, the safety out of Illinois. Keely Ringo, the fourth round pick, the corner out of Georgia. Tanner McKee, the quarterback from Arizona, and the sixth round at 188. And then Moro Ojomo, the defensive tackle at 249 out of Texas. But I've had to sit here over the last 5 days and listen to the over the top gushing. And yes, I said the word gushing because it was a combination of gushing and gloating about the masterful job that Howie Roseman has done in this draft. And I'm wondering to myself, so when we drafted these guys, did they come with their own sample gold jacket that they're going to wear up at Canton, or do we give that to them when they get to town and they sign their contract? Because the way they're talking about some of these guys, they might as well just bypass Philadelphia and head to Canton right now, because if you're listening to some of the Eagle like Howie apostles out there, that's exactly what they want you to believe, that somehow we have found the 86 Bear defense or the 85 Bear defense and the 2001 Raven defense all rolled into one with a plethora of University of Georgia football players. And it's amazing to me. Not that I don't think that the draft was good, and not that I don't think it potentially could be very good, but to sit here and say that Howie Roseman has done some masterful work when none of these guys have played any NFL snaps is beyond frustrating for me to have to hear, because it's not fair. It's not fair to the player. It's not fair to the fan. And it ain't fair to Howie Roseman, because these guys have not proven themselves on the field of battle. And as we have been kind of fell victim to, it seems like every year, the over expectations or the over hype on certain draft picks. And I'm going to go back as recently as last year for that. Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean. Okay, so if you thought over the top, or I should say, what I thought was over the top over the selections of Nolan Carter and Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith and so on, I heard the same exact rhetoric last year about the picks of Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis. Remember the Nakobe Dean talk? Oh, he's a first round talent, and he somehow has slid down to the third round, and Howie Roseman masterfully manipulated the board and selected Nakobe Dean in the third round. He's a magician. Well, then why did every GM in the league pass up on this guy almost at least 3 times? Okay, so we got him. You know how many snaps the guy played? I think he played less than 10 or maybe 20. He was a special teams player at the most. And then I had to listen to this all season long. Well, they're just biding his time. He's learning behind the other linebackers. Like, this is college. That we're not wasting a year of this guy's contract as he sits and learns how to play the game. This is not college. You draft somebody in any position in the draft because you feel that they're going to contribute right away. I don't care if it's the first or the 6th round or 7th round. But I had to listen to that nonsense about Nakobe Dean. Now, is Nakobe Dean going to bounce back and have himself a redemption full season next year? Maybe. I don't know, but you don't know. Let's go to Jordan Davis. Again, the mountain of a man. How can we pass him up? First round pick. Had an outstanding first half, suffered a high ankle sprain, and we never saw him again. He was a non-entity by the time we got to the Super Bowl. Why? Was there work ethic issues? We don't talk about the why he wasn't available. We just want to kind of pass over that, well, he wasn't really available for half the season, or he wasn't really effective for half the season. But you know what? He's going to be part of the building blocks or the foundation of the new Eagle defensive line. From where? The sidelines? I am just trying to tell you that I don't necessarily think this draft was bad. I'm going to get into more detail about it, but to sit here and to crown that fraud GM Howie Roseman with some sort of sainthood or knighthood is ridiculous to me. One, you can't evaluate a draft class for at least 3 years, right? And we're going to go back and I want to put that theory to the test, because I think that's the appropriate time where you look back on a draft class and say, you know what? Boom, 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 boom. This is kind of what it is. And number two, there's reasons why Nakobe Dean fell to the third round. There's reasons why Jalen Carter slipped down to 9. If he was the consensus, which he was the consensus best player in that draft, then why the hell did 9 or 8 teams pass on him? But no, the Eagles are some sort of magical organization where they take the most troubled of young men and somehow turn them into, upstanding NFL citizens. I haven't seen that. I maybe I'm missing something. But Jalen Carter fell down to number 9. Why? Nolan Smith fell down to 30. Why? No one's asking those questions. No one's asking that question. Everybody's just fixated on the fact that Howie Roseman manipulated the board, worked his magic, and selected these guys where they were because nobody else wanted them. So, will it work out? I hope it does. And I hope everybody makes me eat my words. I've been kind of right up to this point, but I'm waiting to be wrong. And I hope that Jalen Carter and that Nolan Smith and then the rest of the University of Georgia defensive unit that's on this team right now can turn it loose and turn the NFC East and the NFC into the SEC. That'd be great. That would be awesome. But we can't sit here and crown anybody anything. Can't give away accolades to anybody until these guys go out into the field and they prove it. So, with that being said, let's take a look back of the 2020 NFL draft because we are at that point, right? We talked about it. 3 years. We can look back at a draft class 3 years after the fact and maybe do an evaluation. So, do you guys remember the 2020 NFL draft? I, of course, do. It was that silly COVID draft where the commissioner's in his basement on his barking lounger, right? You know who we picked in the first round that year? I'm going to remind you of who we picked. At number 1, at 21 overall, wide receiver Jalen Reagor out of TCU. Bust. In the second round, 53rd overall, quarterback Jalen Hurts, Oklahoma. Hit. Bing. In the third round, Davion Taylor, 103rd overall, linebacker, Colorado. Bust. In the fourth round, Kayvon Wallace, safety, 127th overall from Clemson. Bust. In the fourth round, Jack Driscoll, guard, Auburn, 145 overall. I got the verdict still out on Driscoll. I think if he can stay healthy, he can be a solid contributor and a future member of that offensive line. But as of right now, he can't seem to stay on the field. But I'm not prepared to give up on him. So I'm going to put a little question mark next to Jack Driscoll for now. In the fifth round, John Hightower, wide receiver, Boise State, 168th overall. Bust. In the sixth round, Sean Bradley, linebacker, Temple, 196th overall. Bust. In the sixth round, wide receiver, Quez Watkins, Southern Miss, 200 overall. Dropped the most important pass of his career in the Super Bowl. Bust. In the sixth round, Prince Tega Wallahahu. Remember that dude? 210 overall from Auburn. He was a tackle. Bust. And in the seventh round, Casey Toohill, defensive end, Stanford at 233rd overall in that draft. Bust. Okay. One hit out of how many players was that? 8? One hit out of that whole entire draft class 3 years ago. And that's the magic of Howie Roseman? Is that the magic everybody wants me to listen to and believe? Is that the magic that we're supposed to kind of fall suit with? One player and potentially a second one might work out? So all I'm just saying is, man, pump the flipping brakes. Get off the guys you know what. Open the windows, get some fresh air, man. Breathe the air. Look at the sunshine. Howie Roseman is a fraud. And he has his brainwashed, or he has you brainwashed. I just went off 8 players in the 2020 draft, and there's one hit in that entire group. But I'm the problem. So when we look back, and hopefully 3 years from now, when we look back at the 2023 NFL draft class of the Philadelphia Eagles, we're talking hits. But why did Jalen Carter fall to 9? there's been the incident at the national championship game, the accident. That's something that I've never experienced. I've been to combat 6 times, and I've seen things, and I've done things, and I know, unfortunately, know what and how that looks. Okay, and I get that, and it's hard to kind of process all that and then move forward. And I was a soldier for 30 years. This kid's a football player. So I understand that, all right? And that's a lot to ask of a lot of people. But then you factor in that none of his coaches really would kind of stand up for him and give him a glowing report about his work ethic. We had the same deal with Jordan Davis coming out last year, and Jordan Davis disappeared halfway through the season. So I hope the Eagles did their homework on Jalen Carter, because if they did, and it does work, he's a game changer. But if it doesn't work, he's not. He's just going to be a bump on that line. And I want it to work. I really want it to work. But I'm not going to anoint anybody the crown prince of GMing based off of a bunch of players who have never stepped foot on an NFL football field before in their lives. Nolan Smith fell down to 30 overall. Consensus, maybe the second linebacker should have been taken off the board. Why did he fall all the way to the bottom of the first round? Again, work ethic issues, some injury issues. On paper, it looks good. It does. It addresses the needs that were needed to be addressed on this football team. And I'm going to get to the trade here, the biggest part of the draft, in my opinion, this year. But Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo, and Ojimo, they all address huge needs on this team. And then McKee hopefully makes the practice squad as the fourth quarterback. I don't know if he's going to challenge Ian Book, but every player that was drafted represents a key need on this football team that had to be filled. We got to get younger in the secondary, and Ringo could potentially be part of that. Sidney Brown as a safety represents the youth movement of that secondary. Obviously, with the drafting of Jalen Carter and Ojimo, that they represent the future of the defensive line. I get that, but this leads me to my next segment. What are we playing for next season? Are we playing for 2023? Are we playing for 2025 or 26? The Eagles are in a window of winning. They're in a position where they are a top tier team, definitely in the NFC, and they are a top 3 in the league. So to capitalize on that, you're trying to position yourself for the now and the here. And I'm not going to use the LA Rams as the poster child for that, because the Rams did that. They mortgaged their entire future away, and it worked out in the one Super Bowl championship. And that's not what I'm asking for. But right now we have an opportunity to win, and to win today. And does the pick of Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown, Ringo, McKee, and Ojimo, do they represent that today movement? Or are they more 2025? Are we going to be talking, are we going to be talking the same way we talked about in the Kobe Dean about Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, about, they had to have a year to kind of figure out the NFL? Because if that's the case, then we're not in a good spot at all. Because Jalen Carter is coming here to play. And that is what we should expect him to do. A day one starter, a day one contributor. We need him there. Our defensive line is thin. Nolan Smith is here to play. Our linebacker core is thin, really thin. Sidney Brown is here to play. Ringo is here to play. So what does this represent? Does this represent a draft of today or a draft of 3 years from now? And that's a question that I don't know the answer to. I really don't. And I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. If it's a draft for the future, then fine. Because if it works out, we got a stout looking team coming up in the next 3 years. But if we're trying to capitalize on what happened last season and capitalizing on now the big contract given to Jalen Hurts, capitalizing on an offense that really is kind of on a different level than the majority, if not all, except maybe one or two teams out there level, then this draft is kind of confusing for me because where we lack is on the defense. Where we need more help today now is on the defense. We drafted defensive heavy players, but are they ready to play today? Are we asking too much of them? Are we going to put Jalen Carter, who has work ethic issues, who has issues with his coaches, are we going to put him in an unwinnable position? Are we setting him up for failure, asking him to come in and be a day one starter and a day one contributor? Does this kid have it upstairs with all that he's been through to actually endure that and not let it beat him? Are we asking Nolan Smith, who's got some injury issues, a little undersized, are we going to ask him and Kobe Dean to be the linebacker tandem on this team this year? You know, there's a lot of ifs, right? But I guess that's what the draft is. I don't know. I guess that's what the draft is. But on paper, it sells tickets. On paper, it puts butts in the seats. On paper, it gets the fans talking. On paper is exactly what we, the fans, wanted Howie Roseman to do, and um, that shows progress with Howie Roseman. He's now listening to the. I'm not saying he's listening to the fans, but he's doing the more popular thing and taking players from the SEC, taking players from football-ready programs. I don't know what this deal with Georgia is, but he's taking those types of players who come into the NFL already on that plus side of being able to be successful NFL players, and we're not relying on, kids from TCU, and no offense to TCU or their program, or Boise State, no offense to Boise State, and hoping the guy that these kids can translate well, how he's taking the easier route. And that's the smart thing to do. We've been asking him to do that for years. So I give him kudos for that. And I give him kudos for the draft. But I am not, and I never will. And this is, I guess, because of my jadedness and my venom, I don't know. But I'm not going to crown him the prince of general managers for doing somewhat the obvious and somewhat his job. Now it's a matter of whether or not he actually picked the right guys. And this is and from the draft to the Super Bowl, it's a long, hard road filled with a lot of twists and turns and roadblocks and detours and potholes. Do these guys, the 2022 and the 2021 draft class, as we get ready to make that leap next year and reevaluate the 21 or evaluate fully the 2021 draft class, but does the 2023 draft class, did they have the stones to go through that you know rigmarole and lead us to a championship in 2023, or are they more set up to lead us to a championship in 2025? Time will tell. Just like with this Howie thing, with the new Howie, time will tell. So get off the guys. You know what? All right. He did the obvious. He did what he was supposed to do. He brought in players that give him the best opportunity, the best chance to succeed. That's all he did. He probably did nothing more than any of us would have done. Get off his, you know what? All right. He's a fraud, in my opinion. So the Eagle draft, and on Friday night, I went into my hosting job and I said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not taking this stance. I am going to be completely neutral. I told the guys, think of me as Switzerland. All right. I am neutral. I'm not going to take an agenda. I'm not going to take a stance. I'm just going to report the news and go with what the experts say and just kind of spur on the conversation that way. But Friday night's over. And it's back to me being Matty B and back to my agenda. So, on in whole, a very good draft in terms of the players that were supposed to have been selected. But there's questions about every single one of them, just like there's questions about every single player taken in the draft. Did we get the right guys? Did Jalen Carter slip the nine because of some snafu in the universe or team needs and all that, or has he slipped the nine because 8 other GMs weren't really sold on what he could do? Did Nolan Smith slip the 30 Because once again, the universe said the Eagles were supposed to get him at 30? Or was there something else that 29 other GMs just didn't like? I don't know. Now, let's talk about Bijan Robinson for a second, who went at 8 overall to the Atlanta Falcons. And the theory out there, or my own personal theory, and I'm sure this is a shared theory and a well-known theory. I believe Bijan Robinson was the Eagles' target all along. I really do. I think their board was set up with Bijan 1 and Jalen Carter 2. And what happened, obviously, was the Falcons, who I called, by the way, last week on this very program. I mentioned to Kyle Quinn that I thought the Falcons would take Bijan at 8, and they did. Um, I think when the Falcons did that, either Howie was attempting to go to 8 and maybe trade with the Falcons, and maybe that trade was too steep, or he thought maybe the Falcons weren't going to take him, and that's why he went to 9. I don't really know the rigmarole around that or what the conversations between GMs were, but I honestly believe that Bijan Robinson was the Eagles' first selection or first option. And when he was off the board, that's when Howie decided to go up to 10 or go up from 10 to 9 and make the move to bring in their number 2 guy. Because I think he panicked a little bit, and he should, because that's what a good GM does. He kind of reevaluates after every pick is taken, readjust his own board, and do what he's supposed to do to try to get the best player available for his own needs and for team needs as well. So, the Bijan Robinson debate, I think he would have been an Eagle if the Falcons did not select him. I don't think the Bears were going to take him. I really felt that if he got past the Falcons, then he probably would land in the Eagles' laps. But obviously a mute point because the Falcons selected him. Now the Eagles did address their running back situation by taking by a trade that I actually suggested. I'm not lying. You can ask Big Al this himself. Before we went on the air Friday night, I mentioned this. I said, "What about you think? What do you think the odds are that the Eagles take some of those draft picks that they got stored up for 2024 and work out a deal for bringing DeAndre Swift in here?" I even looked up his contract to see if that would be a friendly hit. I think it's like a 2.9 million hit for next year. He's under contract for next season and next season alone. He'll be a free agent. And I mentioned that, and Al entertained it, and it was I mean, it's a doable thing. And then the Eagles turn around and they pick up DeAndre Swift, who I think might be the steal of the Eagle draft, even though he was a trade. It's like AJ Brown kind of worked out that way for them last year. DeAndre Swift is that back that we need. He is the Miles Sanders replacement without going into the draft and taking a running back. And as I said, I think Bijan Robinson was on their board and was the number 1 pick on their board. But he obviously did not make it to them. And so they had to readjust and pivot. And then kudos once again to Howie. Now he's bringing in an established running back, a guy that who obviously lost his job in Detroit because of the kid from Alabama that the Lions drafted. They bring him in. He is going to be an excellent decoy piece to Jalen Hurts. You're going to have to account for DeAndre on the field at all times, along with Hurts. He raises the bar of the Eagle offense that much higher in 2023 and gives them another explosive weapon to work with, which is going to get that offense. I mean, the offense is off the chart as it is now. It's going to be potentially even better with the addition of Swift. So outstanding pick by or outstanding trade by Howie Roseman as they addressed a major need at running back. But the question now, question today, the question tomorrow, and the question pretty much throughout the rest of the season as we head into the season is going to be, did they do enough on defense? They lost a lot of free agents on defense. Did they do enough to replenish the defense? We went through the draft, the UDFA period. We have the June 1st cut period coming up, but have the Eagles done enough on the defensive side of the ball to not take a step back? Because apparently that is also a thing here in town. As everyone's expecting the Eagles to take a step back. Well, why in the hell would you expect the Eagles to take a step back? You have a maestro of a GM who everything he touches turns to gold. Why would you expect a step back here from the Eagles? Why? The time to win is right now. The window is open right now. Why in the hell are you going to step back? You got to go forward into that window and win. But does the offense absolutely provides them that ability? But is the defense going to be there enough? Was there enough done? Is there enough playmakers currently on that defense right now through the draft to make this team a Super Bowl champion? And only time will tell from that. So I am going to give Howie Roseman kudos because he deserves it. He had a smart draft. And I think he put the best players that he could possibly get his hands on in a position to help out this team. But to crown him and anoint him some sort of god is absolutely ridiculous. He's not. He's flawed. Check out the 2020 draft class review. All right. It's been 3 years since they've been drafted. And out of that entire group, one hit, Jalen Hurts. That is not very good. So that does the NFL draft. Thank God it's over. We can segue back into the summer sports and have ourselves some fun with that. But the Eagles, with their masterful GM, Howie Roseman, picking some really good players potentially, but they are not Hall of Famers yet. They are not all pros or Pro Bowlers yet. They are just potential really good college players. So there you have the NFL draft. Now let's transition on to back to the basketball court as I opened up with the Joel Embiid MVP championship talk. It's as I again mentioned, a much deserved, much overdue award given to Joel as he was selected as the MVP of the NBA. And last night, the Sixers started their series against the Boston Celtics, and they in a series going in. I'm not giving them much of it. I didn't give them much of a chance. Boston in 5, and then with Boston in 6, and then I find out Joel's not playing because of the knee. Boston in 5. Maybe they win game 4 in Philly to kind of keep the series alive for one additional game. Just didn't really think there was much life to that team without Joel Embiid. And then last night, they go out there between Maxey, Harris, Harden. We can go Paul Reed, and you can throw in Melton there as well. They went out there and they left everything. Every player on that team left every ability that they had of playing basketball on TD Garden's floor last night. And it took that type of effort to beat a Celtic team that just didn't stop. They're a very good team. And obviously, we're not going to be able to get that effort from James Harden every night. But boy, 45 points. I mean, that was James Harden from 5 years ago. That was the James Harden that used to play for Oklahoma City that just used to befuddle, or Houston, it used to befuddle us when he'd come here. It was amazing to see that. Just a great game to watch. And if you're not a basketball fan and you want to become one, go back and Google that game and watch it. You're going to be an instant basketball fan after you watch that game because it had everything for the Sixers. It had clutch shooting from Maxey, as I said, I don't talk about them, and I've suspended that based on the effort last night. I am going to re-engage on the Sixers for the final playoff run here, but yes, I'm breaking my suspension. I'm coming on. I need to talk about them. I've been silenced long enough. So I'll be addressing the Sixers weekly here on out to the end of the season. But they just were everything that they had to do. They did the game plan, which was obviously perimeter shoot and pray to God everyone's shooting really well. It worked. The Sixers were completely dominated by the Celtics underneath in the paint. I've never actually seen anything like it. The Celtics had penetration up and down all night long. Nothing the Sixers could do on defense worked. The Celtics were moving the ball really well. The Sixers were not coming off passes well. They weren't coming off screens well. They looked confused at times. Paul Reed in the first half looked like he didn't know what he was doing out there. He got better in the second half, got more tenacious. But Paul Reed obviously is not the answer, and we don't have an answer. The backup Joel Embiid, which we haven't had one, and since we traded the guy away last year in the Ben Simmons deal, it's been frustrating in that aspect because just is a backup center that hard to find? is a really good backup center that hard to find in the NBA? I know we're asking a lot to replace Joel Embiid, but Paul Reed just looked helpless in the first half. But in the second half, he altered his game a little bit, did some things differently, um, tried to keep people in front of him more in the second half, and it worked better. They slowed things down a little bit, and then that shooting, the Sixers shooting. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Sixers shooting kept Boston at bay. It kept Boston having to shoot threes. It kept Boston for having to take perimeter jump shots at times because the Sixers just wouldn't stop coming at them. The 3-point shooting was off the chains, and James Harden was on another world last night. He was 5 years ago, James Harden. And obviously, if you factor Joel Embiid in the last night's game, it would have been a blowout. But as what it was just an amazing game, a high energy game from the Sixers. One of the best wins I've seen this team have in a very, very long time. And the Sixers now have a 1-game-to-nothing lead over the Boston Celtics, with now the reigning MVP in the NBA potentially playing tomorrow night in Game 2 in Boston. More to follow on that. I suspect he'll be. You know what? I don't know. I think they sit him for Game 2. I do. I think mission accomplished. They get the split in Boston. At the very worst or least, it's a split in Boston. He gets to sit for a few more nights. He comes home. Game 3, that place is going to be on fire. He gets his trophy, and he just kind of runs off the emotion in Game 3, and the Sixers win. I just think that might be the better thing to do. I don't know. Um, Obviously, I don't know really the status of his knee, but I would not be surprised if he does sit for Game 2, and then they reinsert him back in the lineup for Game 3 in front of the hometown fans after he gets his trophy, and that place is just going to be like totally on fire on Friday night down there in South Philly. So Sixers are up 1-0 over the Celtics in one of the best team wins I have seen the Sixers play since Game 1 of the '01 Finals. I mean, let's face it, it was the best. That's the best win since then. Was last night, and I watched every minute of it. It was back and forth all night long. The Sixers looked gassed at times. They looked confused on defense at times. But what they didn't look at all was unable to shoot, and they were shooting the hell out of the ball last night. And James Harden, my MVP last night, far and away, one of the best games I've ever seen him play. Maybe the best game in a Sixer uniform, and one of maybe his top 10 ever. So 1-0 Sixers over the Celtics as Game 2 tomorrow night in Boston as the Eastern Conference semifinals rage on. And speaking of raging on, let's finish up on this note. Well, before I go to that note, let's talk some wiffle ball mania and the Eagles Autism Foundation fundraiser, May the 13th, 1 to 8 p.m. at Dolan's. Charlie Manuel, Mickey Morandini, Jamie the Sports Guy, and Hollis Tank Thomas are going to be on location at Dolan's for the Wiffle Ball Mania. If you've never been to one of those things, I suggest you go and YouTube one. I know that the EOP, I think, covered it last year, and they're going to be covering again this year. Yours truly may be in attendance as well. But please, it's a great cause. Head on down to Dolan's on May the 13th and support the Eagles Autism Fundraiser Foundation or Foundation fundraiser, and enjoy some great times with some great like-minded Philly sports people. That is Saturday, May 13th, 1 to 8 p.m. And for your ticket needs, and Game 3 is coming, folks. Game 3, or if you want to hit Boston tomorrow night, you gotta Jones there. You gotta itch, you gotta scratch, and get in a car, take the 2-hour trip up 95 to Boston. Don't forget, before you do that, visit Sherry's Tickets Town at www.sherrystickets.com and get your tickets there, because I guarantee you're not going to find better priced tickets anywhere, because at Sherry's, they're great prices and no hidden fees, and you save an additional 10% when you enter the promo code EOP10. So what are you waiting for? Why are you still listening to my voice? And if you are dealing with workman's compensation, motor vehicle accidents, personal injury, or criminal law, Dave Cherry, 610-565-0300 is the man to call. When you give Dave a holler, tell him EOP, Matty B, and Talking Philly Sports, Matty B sent you. And here we go. The little teaser trips, right? This is Philly Sports Trips, all the games that they're going to sponsor or they're going to be in attendance for next season. You got Kansas City, New England, Dallas, LA, Seattle, and Tampa. This is what's happening. That's the Rams, by the way. It's not the Chargers, that LA trip. We don't have dates and times yet, but they will be here before you know it. In a couple of weeks, the NFL will drop their schedule. And these are the games, the out of town games that Philly Sports Trips will be in attendance to in the 2023 season. But don't wait for these games. Head over to phillysportstrips.com right now because they got stuff happening right now. Next weekend, they're headed to Denver. It's the ultimate, I call it the ultimate Philly twofer, right? You got the Union playing some soccer out there, and you also get the chance to go watch the Phillies play the Rockies all in the same weekend. To really get your Philly sports fix on. And later this summer, Philly Sports Trip is headed out to Pittsburgh, to PNC Park, and Wrigley Field as well in Chicago, to name just a few places. So what are you waiting for? Head over to phillysportstrips.com and travel like the pros do. All right, folks, let's wrap it up with my final segment. And I left it the best for last, the fighting Philadelphia Phillies. Enter the month of May, miraculously somehow finished 2 games over 500 in April. I mean, with the pitching issues, the injury issues, the runners left in scoring position issues, they found a way to get themselves to 2 games over 500. And they put themselves in a position. They're right back in this thing. Last night was not good, 13-4 beatdown at the hands of the Dodgers. But tonight at Chavez Ravine in Tinseltown, Los Angeles, the return of Bryce Harper, just 5 months and about, 8, 9 days removed from Tommy John surgery, as Bryce will be reinserted into the lineup with no spring training, no rehab assignment. He'll be going right into that third position as our DH. And what are your feelings? Because I'm a mixed bag as well. I totally 100% believe he would not be in that lineup if he wasn't fully cleared to play. And at this stage of the season, it really doesn't make any sense to rush him back. I mean, we expected this kind of season for at least the All-Star break. I mean, that's what everybody was kind of prepared for. Now, the Phillies are dealing with a little bit more than just Bryce Harper's injury. I mean, you throw in Rhys Hoskins, you throw in Derek Hall, you throw in the other pitching issue injuries we've had. So maybe the need to get Bryce Harper back in the lineup exists a little bit more. I don't know, but I still don't think the panic button is being pushed yet. So I have to believe that he is actually cleared to play, and that's a good thing, because obviously when you're talking Bryce Harper, you're talking a whole different level of player. He changes the lineup. He changes your approach to facing the Phillies. He changes everything about it. Now, let's be very cautious here. The guy hasn't faced live MLB pitching since the World Series, and it's not going to happen overnight. I don't expect him to come out and bat 500 over the next 10 days. I expect a interesting month, a very slow burn of a month of May. And as he tries to kind of figure out his swing, also tries to figure out his body after all that. I mean, the guy just went through major Tommy John surgery. Maybe his swing has to be altered. Maybe he hasn't figured out how to alter that swing. I'm not sure what all the body mechanics that are going to have to go into this, but I think we got to be very cautious as fans and not expect him to come out like it's the day after the World Series and he's only been sitting around for a day or two. He's been out of the game for 5.5 months. He hasn't had a spring training. He hasn't had any kind of rehab assignment. He is coming in cold, but it's Bryce Harper. And if anybody can do it out there, it's him. And it's definitely a great sign. It's definitely something that the Phillies can get happy and excited about, especially the fans at Bryce Harper is coming back. And as I mentioned, he has a whole nother dynamic to this team. And with the injury problems that they've been faced with throughout this season, it is definitely well expected or well welcomed as we welcome Bryce Harper back. 15-15, the Phillies are now hanging in there, right? They did what they had to do in April. They found a way to get 2 games over 500, and that's kind of what I expect baseball teams to do in April. That's what I think a baseball team's expectation for the first month of the season should be, is to finish a little bit above 500 and try to stay relatively healthy. They got the 500 thing down, and maybe not so much on the health, but I'll take one of two right now. They're 15-15 as they begin May, and May was not a kind month to the Phillies last year, and May is going to be difficult. We got the Braves and Mets this month. We got the Giants, we got the Blue Jays, we got the Red Sox, we got the Cubs. We got some teams we haven't seen. Arizona's in there this month, so it's going to be an interesting month for this team. They need to continue to get better and build off that momentum. Working on getting those runners left on base stat down, getting that strikeout stat down. But things are trending in the right direction, and Bryce Harper is certainly huge part of that. And that is going to bring me to the end of this show, folks. I want to thank you for coming along the ride with me again. Eagles draft was potentially very good, but it is not a definite. Using the 3-year rule of evaluating draft classes, we have 3 years to wait to see what the 2023 group will do. And what will the team look like in 2026? Will that window of winning be open still? Will it be closed? Will thankfully Howie Roseman be fired by then? We don't know. But to anoint Howie Roseman the king of kings because he basically did what he was supposed to do is ridiculous. Get off as you know what. The Phillies welcoming Bryce Harper back is a huge thing. It continues to kind of move this team along in the right direction in 2023, and that will start tonight as they are 15-15 at the 30-game mark. And then the Sixers, once again, congratulations to Joel Embiid, your 2022-2023 NBA MVP, and the Sixers will take a 1-game-to-0 lead into game 2 tomorrow night against the Boston Celtics at the TD Garden. Until we talk again, folks, that is the news, and I am out of here.